Hi Akshita, how are you doing?
I'm doing great, thank you. How are you?
I'm good, and first of all, congratulations for the ISB Admit. Of course, I'm sure you're pretty happy given that you have a year to work before you join ISB, so good time in hand to celebrate the Admit.
Yeah, thank you.
And of course, this was through the early entry option, so which means you didn't have a lot of experience. You worked with two companies in less than 2 years, gained some good exposure overall. You're working in a very
Right.
interesting field. So let's start by
Mhm.
understanding your academic and professional profile better.
Yeah, sure. So I did my undergrad from DJ Sanghvi. I did my engineering in electronics and telecommunication. And
Okay.
after that, I was placed on campus itself at ZS Associates as a business operations associate. So I joined in 2018, immediately after my graduation, and I worked there for about a year. And then I switched over to a smaller company in Mumbai that was Professionally Solutions, where I got a more of a project management role, and I got to work with. So at ZS, I was working with a pharmaceutical client, with a singular pharmaceutical client, and there I think I had a good career progression because I got responsibility very quickly over there, and I learned a lot of basic professional skills working in a multinational and working with a lot of data. And then I wanted a role with more responsibility because I think there was more of a hierarchy there and I wanted to change my function. So then I came into more of a project management role here at Professionally Solutions, where we have a wider range of business problems and we cater to the film and entertainment industry within Mumbai. So that is my current role over here.
Great. So just to go a bit deeper, what kind of projects do you deliver to the film industry?
Sure. So we have basically the software. Basically, we have a couple of products. One is a exhibition software which works in multiplexes such as Inox, and it's the ticketing software that they use to generate tickets to you. And even when you go and buy like a food and beverage, they're using our software. Then the other software would be a film distribution software, which is used by companies such as Universal Studios, where they use it to sort of make sure the movie that they're producing reaches the cinemas. So these are the products that we have, and I'm working, sort of a client-facing role where I interface with the client and the technical team, and I ensure there are no gaps in the expectations along the life cycle of the project.
Very interesting. So you are kind of leading projects and working closely with clients who are from the industry.
Yeah, right.
Great. And when you applied, you just had over a year of experience. So it must not have
Yeah.
been easy to build the application, given that you had not worked for long enough to have a
Mhm.
wide range of stories or achievements, which typically people with 4, 5, 6 years of experience have.
Right.
So what was your application strategy and the primary areas that you focused on?
Right. So my strategy was basically focusing on what makes me different. So I understand that work-wise, I just had over a year of experience. So I picked up things that I thought would stand out from college. From one experience was from college where I started a sort of literary society, which I thought would be different than the usual fests and things that people usually write about. Another thing that I work is as a pro bono consultant, which I thought would really make my application stand out because most of the people who work as pro bono consultants usually either have an MBA or are very high up the corporate ladder. So that was a very interesting experience that I wanted to include and which also I think really helped. And the third was that I wanted to highlight the amount of responsibility that I got very early on in CS. So it was these three factors for my profile that I wanted to highlight. And in terms of my career goals, I wanted to make sure that I come across as extremely clear in what I want to do and how what I've done until now has tied up to that.
Right. So what I hear is probably you focused on three areas. One, leadership stories from work. Second was, of course,
Yeah.
how you progressed in your career. And third, what you could do beyond
Yeah.
your work.
Yeah. Correct.
Great. So, pretty good. And certainly with less experience, these are interesting areas to touch upon. Now, while building your application, you work with, you were mentored by consultants at ISBmantra. So what kind of inputs you received from the team that you think were most useful or helpful to you? And how did your approach or perspective get enhanced based on these interactions?
I think one of the biggest value adds was that because I was speaking to ex-ATCOM members and even like the counselor assigned to me, it was I got to view my application. I began to view it from the lens of a potential ADCOM member as versus to my view, which was purely as an applicant. And they made me understand. So the first counseling session I had, I understood that for ISB, they put you into buckets based on your profile and what skills that you highlighted. So immediately I understood that okay, I'm probably going to be bucketed into an analytical category as an engineer. And then how do you stand out within that bucket? So then that was help. I received help on that through the counseling sessions where I was really asked to think through what I think I did differently or what stood out throughout during in my application basically, because there are a lot of engineers. For example, to give you an example, I had written a few research papers in college, and I thought that maybe I should write about that, but then I was told by the counselor that okay, so if you think about it objectively, there's going to be a lot of engineers who've done that. So how will that make your application stand out? And basically, the focus on peer comparison in my application is really a perspective that I don't think I would have thought about is so much in depth without ISB Mantra.
Right. So one was, of course, understanding things from the admissions perspective, and then
Right.
trying to find ways which will help you differentiate, which will help you stand out.
Right.
Interesting. And how was your experience interviewing with ISB? Because you came or you went as an early entry option candidate. So what were the key areas of discussion during an interview, given your low experience? Did the interviewers ask you a lot of technical questions? Probably was it related to your ACADS, or was it more around your professional experience? What did you feel overall?
I think mainly it was all around the essays and everything I had written on the profile. They wanted to, so there was a point where they picked up specific words from the essay and they asked me, oh, what do you mean by this particular word? And I was ready to back it up with examples. So to begin with, the interview started based on my professional experience. It was based around essay one about things that I had written about ZS and my current role. And they were really interested to know what I do in my current role because they said that, oh, we already know what ZS does, and tell me what you think about what are you doing now in your current organization and how does the film industry work. And this was something that I actually thought might not work in my favor because I thought they would question me and maybe interrogate me about why did you leave ZS and completely switch your function and industry. But I think that it worked in my favor because it was something different and they genuinely wanted to know more. And there was not too much questioning around my current role. They were pretty understanding because I just worked there for 3 months. But there were in-depth questions around ZS, technical questions about mathematical models I had built and what considerations I took in while building them. So there was a lot of questioning around ZS. I feel like also things like what would you like to change in the organization?
Right.
Apart from that, there were questions around my pro bono experience, and a lot of their questions were more directed towards, okay, so what did you do? Like, we don't want to know about the project. Tell us about your contribution specifically. So the questions were very pointed towards that. And then again, on my goals, they wanted to see how clear I am about what I want to do, and more importantly, how much research I've done because I had mentioned a few companies and they gave me hypothetical situations related to those companies. And since my goal was product management, they asked me a couple of questions around that as well to see how clear I am about what it entails. and how much research I've done. So I think, yeah, that covered it.
Right. And did you feel at any point that it was more or a lot to stress you, or was it mostly a conversation was which was to understand you better? Because often candidates who have not gone through this experience, they kind of don't know what goes inside. Are the interviewers making it a stress interview, or is it more about what you have done, which you just kind of elaborated?
So there were actually three panelists, and two of them were very conversational and friendly, and the third panelist was trying to make it into a bit of a stress interview where he was trying to make me second guess my answers. Like, are you sure about that? And you can think about it and then answer. So I think there was definitely a bit of a stress factor, but then it was sort of balanced out by the other two panelists who genuinely wanted to know what have I done, how have I contributed, what have I learned.
Right. So more around understanding if you stand by what you're saying, if you're able to. Okay. So what you mean is, of course, they were trying to understand what you're saying, but there was also an attempt to go deeper and verify if you've really done things.
Yeah, because they asked me about challenges, they asked me about how I contributed, so they were trying to verify it. And
Right.
sometimes just picking up words, particular words from my essay, and asking me what I meant with that. So then I backed those up with examples, and then they were pretty happy because I used relevant industry examples. So they seemed quite satisfied with those answers.
Right. And that
Yeah.
also means that one has to be extra careful with what they write in their application and the kind of
Yes.
achievements they want to bring about during the interview.
Definitely. I think you need to have to be able to back up every single word on the application.
Right, pretty too. So you went through several mock interviews and counseling sessions with experts at ISB Mantra as well.
Yeah.
So if you could share more about how the different sessions helped you streamline your thoughts and how did you see your approach changing through these sessions?
Yeah, sure. So the first session I had was the mock interview that was without preparation. And that really made me understand where I stand, what questions I can typically expect, and how I should prepare for them, and what preparation is required. So it helped me identify gaps in my preparation. The second one was the career goal session, which was again around a half an hour session, and it was pretty insightful because I had used certain terms in my essay which I had to then learn how to normalize. So I had said that I want to become a product manager, and I was really made to think during that session that is it really feasible to become a product manager with just so little experience straight out of ISB? So in the interview, I managed to normalize it by saying I would like to enter the function of product management and then eventually grow as a product manager. So that really helped me. Apart from that, the third one then again was another the sort of session with you where you helped me with whatever questions that I had and how to answer them. And like I mentioned earlier, I was really a little skeptical about making the switch in career within 1 year. So I think the kind of pointers that you gave me made me very confident, even though it did not come up in the interview, it gave me a lot of confidence for the preparation itself. And
Right.
again, whatever common questions I had, and common questions and preparing answers to those. So that was the third session, and then there was another mock interview where it was with someone from the industry from ISB, so someone from product management. So speaking to him really helped me because he asked me a couple of product management interview questions that are typically asked, and something like that was asked to me in the actual interview itself, where they asked me, like, you have to make an app, tell me the product life cycle. And he had also helped me with a lot of guesstimate type questions that might be asked based on his interview experiences in ISB that he gave for getting a product management job. And then, of course, the final interview was, I think I was pretty well prepared by the time the final interview came around. There were a few questions on current affairs in the final mock interview, I mean. And I felt quite confident by the time I reached the final mock interview. So I was very calm for the actual interview itself.
Right. Glad you benefited
Yes.
from it, and of course, the idea was to expose you to different set of people, different kind of people, how they look at your profile. So
Yeah.
yes, there was someone who has worked with the ISB admissions team, someone who was an ISB alum, worked in the industry that you're looking to get into. So
Right.
these interactions potentially make you think how the interviewers would look at your profile.
Definitely. Yeah.
Great. And one thing or another thing unique about your profile or your application was that you submitted a GRE score, right?
Right.
So a lot of candidates or most of the candidates who apply take the GMAT, and people who take the GRE or
Mm-hmm.
are thinking of taking the GRE, they also ask us
Mm-hmm.
if they will not be preferred, or that the GRE score will not be preferred over the GMAT. So did you have any such
Mm-hmm.
concerns as well? And what kind of research did you do to understand that, okay, no problem, I'll go ahead and take the GRE? And what was
So
your reason
yeah.
of taking the GRE instead of GMAT?
So honestly, I took the GRE at the end of college, where I was a little again. I was planning to apply for masters also, and then I could apply to ISB as well. So that is one of the reasons I took the GRE, because I was planning to apply for masters. And when I researched, I didn't think it would be too much of a problem. Although like working with ISBmantra, I did realize that my GRE score falls at the border. It translates to approximately a 700 in GMAT, and I think you all made me aware very early on that for a GMAT score that is on the lower end of the spectrum, and I would have to put in then an adequate amount of effort into the interview and my essays. I was made aware in the beginning itself that I would have to compensate for it in the interview and the essays. So I don't think I was then skeptical about having a GRE score instead of a GMAT.
Right, makes sense.
Hmm.
And of course, as an EEO candidate, you have more than a year before you join ISB. So
Yes.
it must feel great to hold on to an admit for a year. So typically candidates enjoy their ISB experience for 1 year, and of course after that
Yeah.
as an alum. But you have 2 years to experience that, celebrate that, and
Right.
that is one part of there is one good part of the early entry option admit. But
Mhm.
what are your plans for the next 10, 12 months? What kind of interactions have you had with alumni or ISB till now? You're probably part of different groups. So how is it going, and how do you plan the next year or so?
Yeah. So officially from ISB, I haven't been added to any groups as such, but I had reached out to a lot of the alums before, during while preparing for my interview. So I'm still in touch with them, especially those in product management. So they've recommended a few resources, some of the popular books that I can read to, gain more clarity about wanting to go into that function. And apart from that, I think I'm just going to be focusing on work, maybe taking up something extracurricular for my communication skills, like joining a Toastmasters club probably. And yeah, I think staying in touch with different alum over the year that I plan to reach out to that are in product management, since that's where I want to go.
Right. I think the next year or so can very well be leveraged to connect with
Yeah,
the right set of alumni and even non-alumni, even people who are in product management in general, to understand what it takes to get
right.
the right job after ISB.
That's correct.
Great. I think this was great insight and a lot of good inputs for people who are looking to apply now, especially the EEO candidates. And
Yeah,
thanks a lot for being so candid and being able to share your experience so openly.
yeah.
This was really awesome in terms of, and of course, we enjoyed working with you in terms of how committed you were to your own application, obviously. So wish you all the best, and
So,
of course during ISB you've been an academically bright student, so wish you do great in academics and
thank you.
otherwise. And thanks again for taking our time, Akshita.
Sure, I'm happy to help. Thank you.